Hello and welcome. Today we're going to show how Excel Lambdas can be turned into reusable logic libraries using D4E. In a previous video we showed how complex Excel formulas can be transformed to support CPS 230 aligned governance. In this video we will demo how Excel formulas and lambdas specifically can also support speed, collaboration, and competition-style problem solving. We'll do this using two files. One is our pre-competition strategy pack here. The other is the competition finance model itself. We have both files open. Now let's look at the first prep file. This prep file represents everything we prepared before the match starts. Now we open the D4E palette using Ctrl I or Ctrl P. What you can see now is a mix of logic coming from different places. You have our data actions list. Some items are lambdas already registered with the name manager. Some are lambda data actions with the command define name or place cell or command code place wrap. And some are just normal formulas that could be promoted if we choose to. In this example, we have prepared two sources, my lambda lib over here and my formula lib. They are actually also reflected here in these two sheets. In other words, what this did is actually read these two sheets. You can think of this as our team's shared lambda and formula libraries. We're now ready to load our team artifacts into the competition file. All we have to do is export what we see here, assuming we want everything. And when we click on export, we will see that a sheet has been created called lambda, also in the competition file. So we have now created a new sheet in the competition files which contains our artifacts. At this point, our artifacts have been sent to the competition file. We can close the prep file as we do not need it anymore. So nothing is hidden, all logic is visible, and everything is reviewable here. At this point, everything that matters is centralized. Let's play with what we have to illustrate how it's used. Let's open the palette again and read this lambda sheet. Here we have the lambda sheets, and we can see that this has define name commands, place cell commands. These are data actions that we will use. Anything that uses define name can be loaded into the name manager as a lambda. Other commands like place cell can be used directly. We look at place cell in more detail later. Now we've left with just a competition file, but it already contains everything we prepared earlier. From here, we can register lambdas in the name manager, and we have a handy sheet containing all the data actions we can reuse, and those that are defined names, we will simply send them over to the name manager. At the moment, if we look at name manager, it is empty, but watch what happens if we now click on this button to copy all our prepared lambdas to the name manager. So here we go back and we see that the name manager has now have those items we have registered. What's happened behind the scenes is that the define name commands were executed, creating new entries in the name manager. These entries are lambda formulas, and we can now reference them directly in Excel by typing the lambda name in a cell. This is the end of our pre-match preparation. Our strategy pack is ready. We have treated the preparation file as an external library and not the active model. Now we're in the competition phase. This is the problem we need to solve under time pressure. It is just a demo problem file. We're not demonstrating how hard or easy the model problem is, but we want to show how easy it is to use our tools in the competition. Everything still works because the tools sit behind the model. Now we bring in our tools. We have opened the palette in our competition file, and immediately the competition model has access to our lambdas and our data actions. Now let us do a few things with the lambdas as well as the data action sheet. We can type in the cell the name of our lambdas, and for example, we have registered a lambda called broker margin. So like a name lambda, we can simply start typing, and there we can see it. That is the lambda we have registered before. As another tool, we can execute any one of this as a data action, and let's find out what this one is for. For example, this is a wrapper. If you have an existing formula in your problem file or your model, you can click or execute this data action, and what it does is that it has a formula to wrap your formula in. So if you, for example, double click that, watch what happens to the formula. You see it wrapped the original formula into an if error and a rounding formula. So we have a few wrappers available. We can keep wrapping something, and then a wrapper for text in case it makes sense to check for text, and so on. Notice that also we can undo what we've just done, and therefore the original formulas go back. There are many things that a data action can do. We've seen in previous videos that a data action can even be a a program to read an SQL database. In this case, these data actions are actions to manipulate Excel formulas, but they can be mixed here. So it depends on our needs. But at the moment, we are assuming we use this as our tools for a competition for Excel financial model. So if we look at our problem model file, there are pricing logic, there are margins, there are ratios, capital charges. All of those are formulas that we can manipulate to solve the problem. In here, the execution is clean, the intent is obvious, but when we use one of ours, and that's what makes it very useful. Next, let's simulate a mid-match rule change. For example, we found that we have this lambda, and we've been using it, but we would like to modify it a bit, because as we go on, we can see it can be modified. So we can edit our lambda, and in here we have the old lambda. We can save it, and it will save as a different data action. And what do we have here? We have a name, we have the name for the name manager, we have a title above there, and a name for the name manager, and a formula. And since we are manipulating it, or since we are editing it and improving it, what we have is a way to test it. For example, you click on Get, and here you can test the lambda. It knows that your lambda uses 3 variables, and you can actually provide in your test harness, you can provide some values, and then you can click on test, and it will provide the result over here. So yes, and then you can save that if that's what you want after you've changed it or finalized it. And if you save it, for example, it will add it to the list of lambdas we have in our storage. So somewhere here would be the lambdas that we have created, and it will be also added to the name manager. So we demonstrated that we can change our lambdas, and we have a list of them here. We can keep executing them, and don't forget, you can use the search key to look for keywords, and then you can easily see which lambda or data action you would need, and you can keep using them that way. So now we can see how we have successfully, or we can successfully solve our problem model in the match. And that's it for this file. Now that the match is over, we can move to post-match optimization. Using the same palette, now that we've finished the match and we have our experiences, we can ask ourselves what happened, what data actions and what lambdas did we use. Using the palette, we can filter down only to the lambdas that are actually used. We can edit them here, and we can clean up the lambda names. We can remove noise. What is left is a small proven lambda library. We save this to a new data action sheet. For example, let us give an example. We save only this lambdas. This is the old lambda, and if we save these ones, we will get a new lambda with just the ones that we chose. This is now possibly what we want to move forward with in the next competition. We can now close everything. For the next competition, we repeat the cycle. We open a new workbook. We keep all these lambdas, the new ones especially. Perhaps we call them next comp, and then we have something to put in our next competition. We similarly we load it into our to the next competition file. There's no rebuilding, there's no rediscovery, it's just execution. To summarize our demo, lambdas are still Excel formulas, but when managed with D4E, they become reusable, portable, and competitive logic libraries. You prepare once, you execute fast, you adapt safely, and your skill compounds over time. On top of lambdas, we've seen our data action libraries provide useful logic such as wrappers and many other formula manipulations. Finally, notice how this same pattern also applies to enterprise financial models. That's what D4E enables. Thank you, and see you next time.